You are watching the Fayetteville Government Channel. Up next, full coverage of the latest meeting of the Telecommunications Board. The Telecommunications Board is composed of citizen volunteers and meets on the third Thursday of each month. This board advises the City Council regarding telecommunications issues and assists city staff with the administration of the city's public access, education, and government television channels. And now, the Telecommunications Board.
I'll go ahead and call the August 16th, 2012 meeting of the Telecommunications Board to order. The roll call first. Pennington is here. Mr. Smith? Here. Mr. Ehrig? Here. Mr. Goggins? Here. Mr. Shepard?
Here.
Do not see Spearman or Spencer at the moment, but they may join us later. Next item on the agenda is approval of the July meeting minutes. Everybody's had a chance to look at those.
I move we dispense with reading the minutes and approve the minutes presented.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Ehrig to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next we move into approval of the meeting agenda. I've got one thing to add, which is officer elections as set by our bylaws. We elect officers in the August meeting every year. Any other additions or changes to the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Where do you want to put the?
Oh, I was going to do it next after approval of the agenda.
Okay, so it'll be due to the
No, yes.
I move the agenda be approved with that addition.
Okay. Second. Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Ehrig to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. All right. So do we just do vice chair and chair? Okay.
And then the chair appoints whatever standing committees the chair would like to have, or none, if there are none, and just do as ad hoc as need arises.
Okay.
I think we ought to start having a treasurer.
We can be okay without that. Mr. Smith,
Motion at the appropriate time.
you're recognized.
I'd like to nominate Blake Pennington for chair of the Telecommunication Board. Done an outstanding job. Hasn't been sued or had any complaints about it. Runs these meetings on time and does a good job.
Appreciate that. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Is this acclamation then?
If there are any other nominations, this would be the appropriate time. I guess I'll close the nominations. I guess all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay.
I'll make a nomination of Mr. Smith as vice chairman.
Okay.
Chairman of
I would second the nomination. Any other nominations for vice chair? Not. We'll close nominations, and all those in favor of Mr. Smith as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. Sorry, Doc. I think the only standing committee we've got is the Internet Committee. And I think we'll probably stick with that. I think Michael's got a great interest in that. So I'll appoint Mr. Spencer as chairman of the Standing Internet Committee. I think you probably already are. So any other members who are interested can contact Michael about joining his subcommittee. All right, moving on to reports. Television Center Manager, Mr. Giesler.
Thank you. We have had an interesting month since the last meeting. Last meeting we said goodbye to a long-term member of the Government Channel staff, and this month in August we say hello to a new one. Mr. Doug Bankston was hired a couple of weeks ago to fill that position. He comes to our team with a wealth of experience, both as a video production professional, a journalist, and has quite a bit of a writing background as well. We're really looking forward to his contributions and the perspective that he's going to bring. And he's jumped in with both feet and is back there on the camera right now.
Welcome.
Welcome.
So That's been the big addition that we have had. We have Mr. Spearman has joined us. Excellent. Our viewership, as evidenced by our video on demand views, has stayed fairly steady. We've noticed a bit of a fall off in the summer months. I'm going to be interested to see if that comes back up some in the fall. And every once in a while we'll see a spike in some programs, interest in some programs. If there's a controversial issue that might come about, you'll see a spike sometimes in a viewing of, for example, either on a particular date or a particular program. For example, the second most watched program off of Granicus in the last month was the July 3rd City Council meeting. And it's sometimes we can track viewership based on that, which is what it's there for. It's there for as a resource for people to be able to do that kind of research and to see those kinds of things that they may want to be able to get more information of as they go forward doing performing their involvement and being involved in city government. One of the things that has held us up a little bit at the television center is, as I've been saying, we've been having some remodeling work done. We have gotten to the point where we can get to in terms of the process. It's not completed. Building Services is still has us on their list, but they've run into a couple of snags in a couple areas on some other projects, so that's put us down a little bit in terms of the timing. We're just waiting for them to come in and start doing their work. It's not work that we are qualified or have the time to do. So that's where we are on that. So if you do come to the television center, you'll see that the control room is still not finished. We were hoping to be almost completed with it by this time. So we're going to patiently wait for their help. We also ran into a snag, unfortunately, again, with the new studio cameras and the bid for that. Of the bids that we received that bid to the specifications, that answered the specifications accurately, none of them came within budget. So what we had to do is go back and re-evaluate the specifications. We made a few changes in those specifications that's going to allow for people to be able to bid this project within budget, and we are going to sacrifice a little bit of quality in one particular component of these systems, but not anything that I believe the viewer will have particular notice of. So it's not going to be wholly detrimental to the project. Very specifically, we really wanted to have a much higher quality lens for the cameras that we were specifying, and we're going to have to go to a mid-quality lens, a lower quality lens to bring the budget in, to bring the bids into budget. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens, and honestly, you can, in terms of video cameras, television cameras, you can spend anywhere from, $3,000 to $35,000 on a lens, and it's not difficult to have that broad of a range of pricing on one lens that will fit on one camera. So we reduced the specifications on the lens a little bit, and like I said, I don't think it's going to be wholly detrimental to the project, and we should be able to bring it in on budget. We're now waiting for purchasing to resubmit those bids with the new specifications so we can get that back before the end of the year and get that project completed.
How many companies are bidding on these?
I'm sorry?
How many companies are bidding on them?
In the last response, we had 9 companies that actually returned bids. 3 companies returned a no bid, because part of the city process is that a company sometimes returns a document that says we're not bidding. But we actually had we had 14 total responses, and I believe we had 4 that actually answered the specifications accurately, and then we had 3 no bid. So we're getting a lot of response. We just want to make sure that the specifications are clear, and that now they're going to be adjusted somewhat so we can bring those in under budget.
So the camera bodies themselves, they're 1080p or what?
Yes.
And the lenses, are there, shall I say, are lenses made to fit those by any other corporations that you could match?
There are, on this camera, this particular camera, there are, now I don't have all of the specific documentation in front of me, but I believe there are 9 different lens options for this particular camera. And the original bid that we submitted, that we published, the specification for the lens was a higher end lens, because these are studio cameras. We wanted to be able to offer that that higher quality of the lens. That was an $11,000+ lens, and what we're looking at doing is taking that down to a lower cost option, one that won't cost quite as much. The visual quality would probably, I would tell you, it'll be somewhat, if you know what you're looking for, you'd be able to notice it on one of our non-meeting productions, which these will be studio cameras, so they won't, but you won't notice it on what we're telecasting on the cable, because that gets converted to standard depth before it goes out. So trying to find that balance between quality. We're always trying to find that balance between quality and cost. So that's why.
I mean, us old people don't mind because we don't see all those age spots. If somebody's really pretty, you'll do you. Another question, Ken, before we skip forward, I forget it. On the Granicus archives, your top 10 archives. So these viewers in this list on page, top 10 report. These are just people who went to the archives and see these shows, not who watched them. We don't have any record of who watched them live or when they were actually broadcast.
No, we do not get viewership numbers from Cox at this time. I keep asking them on a semi-regular basis, and I'm getting ready to ask them again to try to get viewership numbers from them, because I believe that is something that is important to the residents of Fayetteville and to the city council and to you about who actually is watching the cable channel, who is actually tuned into that. We get the numbers of how many people go to their computer and go watch it on the computer over the internet on demand on the archive, which is what this is. So 39 people watched that city council meeting in the month of July. And when I present these numbers, they are the numbers for the previous month. So in some cases, some of these programs, you might see the date that you see next to that is the date that video was posted on Granicus. So, for example, you see a city council meeting from July 3rd, but you also see one right under it from June 5th. If we go back to June's numbers, that June 5th city council meeting will be on that report as well.
Well, that was the real long one, wasn't it? 3 hours or 4.
I'd have to go back and check. I know we had some.
Who watched that may have gone to sleep and never seen it all. Well, the AT&T Uverse, are they cooperative at all with telling us?
Don't have any numbers from them either. No.
They're still not citywide.
No.
These go to, talk about the cable company at least, and AT&T, I believe both. Are these stations not shown in all the markets, Northwest Arkansas now?
They are shown in, it's my understanding that they are shown in the entire designated market area, what Nielsen Ratings Company calls a DMA, or designated market area, which includes Fort Smith, Fayetteville, Springdale, Rogers, the Benton, Washington County area, and then also includes Fort Smith, which I did some looking, I was looking at those numbers today as well. It's ranked 101st out of 210 markets. And our market area is ranked 101 out of 210 in terms of everything across the country. New York, of course, is number one.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea. Now, everything that you see on Granicus or YouTube is available worldwide. Anybody who has an internet connection and it's not filtered by
So one day we,
governmental organization.
one day this could be 40 million people watched State of America or something.
One day that could be definitely could be several hundred. And as a matter of fact, we have had in the past we have had times when it's been that high, when we could see that. If you'll look at the YouTube top 10 videos on YouTube, you'll see that the Today in America piece actually was viewed 464 times from our YouTube channel, and the next one down from that was an Animals That Need Homes segment that was viewed 108 times.
I don't see the telecom board on
You're making this up.
Now what? On Telecom Board is in the top 10 of July. The Telecom Board of July 19th was viewed 14 times. So we make the top 10 in off Granicus.
Keep watching, folks.
Yes.
Some of you guys turn it on, make your small children watch it.
I'm sure everybody's watching live.
And I would like to remind everybody, if it's a meeting that you want to watch off of, those will be on Granicus. That's available through accessfayetteville.org. If it's not a meeting like an Animals That Need Homes or a History Minute or the Mayor's Corner, that will be on our YouTube channel. A couple of things that I'd like to. Do you have any other questions about that, Mr. Shepard? Okay. One of the things that we've also started working on diligently, because we are planning to bring it to you at next month's meeting for consideration and your advice to the City Council on, is the public access operator contract. And Shelley and I have been working on that. We started having some conversations about the changes that might need to be made based on some other discussions that we're going to have tonight. But we just want to let you know that we are starting to work on that and make some adjustments. And we're not looking at anything very significant, depending on where the City Council goes with your endorsement, if it does pass tonight, of the resolution that's going to be before the board tonight about the funding that we talked about last month. However, we're going to plan on essentially having two versions of the contract ready for their consideration based on what budgetary things that they determine. So that will be, we'll be prepared for that. But we will be ready to bring to you next month what we're going to propose as an operational contract for public access for 2013. And we will get it to you as soon as possible before the meeting so you can look it over and have some time to discuss it. And then our plan, if the timing works out, is to have it before the City Council before the end of October. So that will be, we'll have that done and settled before the end of the year, which we like to have that done because that way we keep things consistent and keep things moving without any disruption. Any other questions?
Thank you, Fritz.
Oh, congratulations on winning a Telly Award. I saw.
Thank you very much.
How many did we submit?
We submitted two pieces for that competition, and one was awarded recognition. And that one was the History Minute segment on the historic courthouse.
Oh,
Neil Bilby is the lead producer on that series, and we've been doing that for quite a while, and it has actually garnered several awards nationally and statewide, and we're pretty proud of that. And that's all those are out there on YouTube. If somebody wants to go out there and watch several of those.
All you spent was $85 to enter each of those shows. Did we get the?
Yes, we got a statuette, and that's in the case down there at the television center.
We'll go buy it.
And a certificate. Here, hold it up.
Taxpayers. Well, it's beautiful hardware.
I believe that it is. I believe it's important for the team to be able to have that level of recognition. We all believe very strongly in them, and I think it's very supportive and very important that they see that. And it's also, as a creative person and as someone who puts that kind of work into that kind of production, that to have it recognized that it does hold up with people, with programs from people like CBS and the Discovery Networks and Disney and ESPN, and we're doing work on a par with that level of people, and it's good for the team and it's good for the city. I think it's great that we have it. The government channel, I've looked around. I have not been able to find a city of our size that has the resources that this city has put into both public access and its own government access television production, and I think that's great that we continue to do that. Been doing it for 30 years now, I believe, and continue to do it. So, thank you.
All right. Next, we'll hear from your media's Executive Director, Ann Shelley, for the Fayetteville Public Access Television Report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. You have the report in front of you, and I just want to point out some highlights. First and foremost, this month was all about new candidate producers and class participants. We, as of tonight, which is about halfway through the quarter, have already exceeded our quarterly contractual obligations for new candidate producers. So we're seeing in the summer months, which have traditionally been the slowest time, our new usership and candidate producer numbers continuing to grow, which is a very good sign indeed. We're very happy about that. And if you just look at the highlight pieces, you'll see we had 32 class and workshop participants, which is one of the highest, if not the highest of all time. Many of those came from the workshop we offered. Our Your Media board member, Dennis Kirkpatrick, who teaches in the journalism department, was able to have one of his graduate assistants actually teach his course on studio interviewing at the studio at the television center. So we had his class and some participants, Mr. Smith and the mayor came, and some other outside participants, and we were able to not only hold the workshop there and bring all these new folks in, but also tape it, so there will be a show that will telecast starting, I think, next week. So it was just a win-win all around. When you look at candidate producers, we had 9, which is technically the second largest of any month, but the largest month was last June when we had 11. But if you look at that, 7 of those were from the Fayetteville High School test out. So really there are only 4 comparable people who just show up and walk into the television center and say, I'm interested in these classes and I want to be a candidate producer. So that's a great number. We're very excited about that. Program requester numbers are pretty steady. If you look at page 2, one of the things that, again, you can kind of see for the year overall at the very top, in total class participation, we're just blowing last year out of the water, in essence. And if you also look down at no-shows and cancellations, this month had the lowest, July had one of the lowest numbers of no-shows and cancellations with only 3. So we see that trend continuing to decrease, which we love, and at the same time participation increasing. So we couldn't be happier. I do want to note that if you look down at the bottom at certification activity, there is one typo. Terry Proctor became a new certified producer, not a new candidate producer, bringing us to 2 new certified producers for the year. Again, we continue to struggle with trying to figure out how to best get those candidate producers to certified producer status. That's certainly been a part of the many conversations that Mr. Giesler and I have had regarding moving forward. But if you look at the numbers below, it's pretty apparent. Candidate producers are up, outside producers and certified producers continue to be down from last year. The highlight on page number 3 would obviously be the short takes comparisons by year. Another trend that we're just continuing to increase the number of participants, most of which have come from our doing outreach and going out into the farmers market. In July, we did our first trial of just walking around with the camera and a sign instead of setting up a tent. Great participation. Had 23 people within a couple of hours that participated. On next Thursday, we'll be at Razor Bash, so doing farmers market again the week after. So we're really trying to get people interested in. And we've had some folks, just a handful of folks, who've done a short take on site there on the square and then come into the television center to follow up and do one as well. So we're hoping more of those, more of that transfer from street to center will continue to happen. And then other big news, we actually had some feedback to report on this month. No complaints, but some feedback. I guess it was somewhat of a complaint. And that was a longtime short take participant, Dick Bennett, was having a difficulty first getting on the live feed online, and we helped him to do that because he doesn't have the digital box that he needs to watch the show. But when he did that, he still couldn't see his short take show as easily as he would like, and he talked to us about that. And pretty quickly it became apparent we could certainly put every week's short takes onto YouTube and then add a page on the website where Watch Short Takes Now. So we've done that. Dick is very happy. We think it best serves all the users, including all the people we're taping on the streets. We can now say go to this website and watch it immediately starting next week. So you go on our website. We've actually added, for lack of a better term, my board treasurer calls them idiot buttons, but 4 little buttons on the side of the website. One says, how do I put my show on television? How do I learn how to make TV? How do I tape a short take and watch Short Takes Now? So you can just go on our website homepage, the public access website homepage, click on those, and immediately now you can watch the Short Takes program that's telecasting that week. So that was another instance where the feedback from one of our users turned into a positive for everyone. And if you look down at the programming comparisons, you'll see at the very bottom of page 4 that the number of program requesters has increased, as have the number of total programs. But again, if you look at the number of outside programs, we're still not meeting where we would like to be or where we've been in the past, which has been part of the conversation and dialogue that we've had. And one of my curiosities is the age of YouTube affecting our outside producers the most? Because instead of now bringing a video that I make down to the television center in order to have it distributed, I can upload it to YouTube in my pajamas. So we're wondering if the outside producers are that category of users that we may continue to see decline because of the age of social media. That said, a lot of the work that's happened over the past month has been working to provide information for the subcommittee, which has really brought all of our dialogue about keeping public access relevant in this new age sort of to fruition. And our hope in increasing the funding is that we will be able to provide the kinds of services that we think will keep public access more relevant. And that is more advanced video classes and the addition of us as the public access provider staff actually doing studio productions for nonprofit organizations and even producers who just can't get the crew together to run a studio production. I mean, that is one of the main draws that the television center has, and it's not being fully utilized, and we think it's because people just can't either master the skill or have the time or energy to be able to get the crew necessary to do a production. So that's one of the main services we want to add to keep the television center and public access relevant in the coming year. And that's really the segue into the later conversation. So I'll stop here with my report. If there are any questions.
Are you thinking of that being a service, having staff members work on these things? Would that be a free service, or would you be collect some revenue?
As everything at the television center, it would be a free service. with the exception of, well, and again, this is the contract negotiations we've started. We would like to change to some degree the fundraisers. If we're doing a fundraiser for a nonprofit, as is allowed in the contract, we would want some kind of fee for that, because that's a whole different thing than us hosting a show that highlights nonprofit organizations, or producing a show for a producer who wants to do a talk show but doesn't have the staffing to do it.
Okay, but for an individual, say I'm film Sierra Club or Omni or something event, 1080p, 29-minute clips, and all it needs will be the documentation of seed and stuff. It's the hardest part, I think, is learning to type in those little
right there, that's not what we're interested in doing. That it's not a studio production.
Right.
And so we wouldn't do that. Now, what we do see changing, which is really a question that would be regarding the contract negotiations, and I know that you've spoken about this before, is changing some of what we do at the Television Center, like adding Adobe Premiere instead of Final Cut Pro, so that someone like you, it would be a much more user-friendly system to use to come in and edit your own production. So that's really where that would fall. But we're talking just about in-studio productions.
We've had several preliminary discussions about this, and we're trying to really figure out what is going to be advantageous for everybody in terms of service to the residents, the city, the relationship with the contractor, with your media and such. And some of those things that we were talking about center around, as Ann said, that our conversations have centered around actual studio, things that happen in the studio, and we produce a program there. But one of the things that we have been discussing is, as we look at more advanced production training for people, studio productions are complex by their very nature, and you have to have more people on a crew, you have to have more specialized skill sets. So, for example, there's the technical director has a particular skill set which is a little different than a good studio camera operator. So one of the ideas that we have been discussing is to have as we look at more advanced training, more advanced classes, create a laboratory type of environment to where the public access staff actually conducts classes where you have, here's our classroom portion of studio production training, here's our laboratory portion of this, where people who would be taking the classes would actually go in and they would be learning how to do these things under the supervision of a staff member. That would be part of their class, but now we have the crew. So if somebody like Mr. Bennett wanted to have a forum, say, and do a program that would be like a forum in the studio, we would have the crew with which to do it and produce it, and he would not necessarily be under the have to deal with trying to figure out how he's going to gather 3 or 4 or 5 people to crew this show and produce this show in the studio. That's one of the ideas that we're kicking around, is to how to make that work.
So that would satisfy those people who are interested in having issue forums that don't have the skills to produce their own.
I think that would enable us to see more of that kind of production being done. Yeah.
And we still wouldn't control the content, we would just provide the crew, which I think is also being better stewards of the equipment, which will now be new equipment. And I would say second to people calling us and asking, I have an event, can somebody come and film it? The next question we've gotten is, well, how can I do a studio show? I don't have anybody that either lives in Fayetteville, has the time, or but I would love to do it. In fact, Mr. Bennett stopped in on you today to talk about that very thing. So there are actively people requesting that. And again, we're kind of bleeding into the next, to your vote later in the resolution, but especially with the closing of Jones Television Network, there really isn't a place where nonprofits can have that forum, and it would be nonprofits that serve Fayetteville. So these are the kinds of things we're talking about, but to do that would require a lot more of our staff, and which again goes into the funding issue. But any other questions about the report
I
itself?
just think it's a wonderful service that we could offer our citizens, and also it increases the amount of local programming we have.
Absolutely, it's a triple win in my opinion.
But I still believe, I don't know about you, Mr. Smith, but when I do what I was talking about, building a meeting for a nonprofit, and it's an important thing like clean energy and et cetera, I don't mind paying $50 out of my own pocket to get somebody to put it together and do that, if I could do that, if it's available. I wouldn't expect it to be free. And your department as a nonprofit trying to operate this, even with what we're hoping to get the raise of $12,000, that still wouldn't pay many salaries or extra time or something to do it. That's why I'm saying that I really believe there should be a charge for certain things that you'd be allowed to collect it or
I guess
take it as a donation.
Sure.
We've done that in the past.
my response is that still kind of teeters on the edge of being being in competition with for-profit service providers with city equipment. Now, taking my service provider hat off and putting my Your Media hat on, that is definitely something we could do for you, and we do. So I don't want the city to be in competition with us. The only very unique thing that the city provides, in my opinion, that we also can't do, and no other for-profit is going to do at a rate that a nonprofit can afford, is the studio and studio productions. And to do that, use that as a key device for public service, to me has been untapped, and that is one thing that we can look at. But I'm not interested in public access being in competition with Your Media, and I'm certainly not interested in being in competition with for-profit service providers either, which there are new ones even down on the square, video production companies. So I think it's a fine line that we have taken several months to learn to walk, but the difference to me is the studio. So
about, again, speaking of outside productions and the assistants, do you have the equipment, Your Media own equipment, so you're not
Yes.
having to use it, but you can edit?
we've done several
these
productions
things
of
people do.
not using any public access.
I knew that was your intent, but I didn't.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
never been there to see.
We'll probably end this year with about $9,000 in revenue from productions outside of public access.
So but that's kept separate from the operation.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to make that money in another way.
Oh, yeah. And we do it at our other office, and
Well, this has never been clear to everybody.
well, we're working on still making it clear. But
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a wonderful program. Thank you.
Mr. Spencer had a question.
Two quick questions for you. You said a lot of people are going to YouTube, you believe now, and probably submitting their videos online. Do we have in the roadmap a way that users or viewers can submit videos online to the city website for production?
They can do through our scheduler, Flint, who does most of the scheduling. He has uploaded programs from YouTube for our schedule and public access.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there is a way
Yes.
for people to do it now.
Right. They just have to request it. That's the disconnect. Most people aren't requesting to have that done.
Is there a way for people to request that online
Mm-hmm.
so they can use the electronic form?
Yeah.
Is that because you want it on the city site or because you don't have your own YouTube channel? Why would you be doing that?
No, if people wanted stuff to play in Fayetteville as well, I was just wondering if there was a way for them to upload it online to the TV station as well as instead of dropping off the disc.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
Because we can drop, on YouTube it takes me 2 seconds to upload it versus
And
dragging in a car.
that would be a question for Flint to answer the technical specifics about, but I do know that some of the PSAs we've done for nonprofits as Your Media, we upload them to YouTube, and that's how he's uploaded them to play on the television station. So I know that he has done that.
Thank you.
I had a question about on page 1. program requesters by ward,
Mhm.
and then there's another category called other that has 20 to 25% of the requests coming.
Right.
Can you elaborate a little on what
Sure,
that is?
those are producers that were grandfathered in as of January of 2011 from the amendment that the city council made to the contract that year, that if people were active producers prior to changing to Fayetteville residents only, and they met certain criteria, they could continue to utilize it. So those are folks like Marshall Mitchell and other people that have been continued to be active and maintain their grandfathered status.
On this money thing, again, just one thing. It seems that, I'm sure there are people we'd be competing, or you'd be competing against, but as nonprofit doing it for a nonprofit is different, I think, than a corporation doing it for a corporation. So that might be a difference. Legal advice on that?
I don't think there is a difference. I mean, your media exists to make money, and they have a contract to provide services to the city, but they also have this private arm,
Which
that
is nonprofit.
And that's why we charge a lot less to nonprofits than the television center and public access staff would do for the same services. And we're looking at all kinds of levels of this for the new contract in 2013. But
It could be
I absolutely, though, bottom line, completely agree with city equipment should not be used to be in competition with any business in Fayetteville. So whether nonprofit or for-profit. So that's really to me, the bar to which we hold everything.
Anything else? If not, we'll move on. There's no old business. New business, which is kind of a carryover from last month, was discussion of the availability of public internet access in Fayetteville, requested by Mr. Spencer a couple of months ago. I don't know if you wanted to share some thoughts on it, start a discussion.
I was just looking at what to
Oh, we just passed over it last month.
Oh, okay.
Since you weren't here.
I think the question was raised, we were just looking at what is available in the city right now, and then what's available in comparable cities. I guess we were going with that. Do you have any information on that?
I do not. I have not done any research on that particular thing. And I think just from some anecdotal observations, I think we talked about that last month. I think the comment was made that, or the month before, the comment was made that nobody here could think of anywhere there are a lot of places where you can go that have Wi-Fi access, but there's not any physical, aside from the library. And I think we have one workstation at the television center where it seems like overseas there are a lot of places that have internet cafes that a lot of places don't. A lot of people don't have internet access in their homes like we do here, or Wi-Fi. They go to a physical location that will have dozens and dozens of computers set up, and they do their computer work in a public area like that, as opposed to doing it at home. And we couldn't think of any place here except the library and the television center that had that capability for the public to use.
But the senior center's got one that works online regularly.
Okay.
You know, but that's
Library at the university.
Do you know the percentage of Fayetteville residents that have access to high-speed internet access?
I
Is it
don't.
the whole city or only partial? Or they can sign up.
No, and I would venture a guess that it would be, we would have to have a, if I can't find those numbers somewhere, else, we would have to have someone conduct a study on that, because we're not going to be able to get those kinds of numbers from the service providers. Their immediate response will be, that's proprietary business information, we're not going to release that. We've asked those kinds of questions, like how many people, how many subscribers are there? Well, we're not going to tell you that. How much percentage of the city do you have built out? Well, we can't tell you that. So that's those kind of numbers from the service providers themselves, I think it might be difficult to come by. But we can certainly try to find some of that information elsewhere. I don't know if, Lindsley, do you know of anything that the city's done recently that might have some of that information about possibly what percentage the city's access is? Okay.
Can you back it out from franchise fees?
No, because the franchise fees are only based on actually they're only based on television services. So you have a company like Cox Communications that provides television, telephone, and internet. The city doesn't collect any franchise fees on the internet or the telephone.
Is that right?
That's correct. That 5% franchise fee is only based on the television. Same thing with AT&T.
AT&T pays for telephone. AT&T?
They pay a different franchise fee for their telephone, but what we usually refer to for here is, but Cox does not. Cox only pays for the television services.
Now, I mention this because at home, I have those three services through Cox. And I always assume, well, we're getting our money off of this, you know, but I guess we're not.
If you look at your bill closely, it will tell you what the franchise fee is, and it's 5%. It will not be
Just like the television.
just on the television, the cable services. If you add, if you do the math on your bill, you'll notice that that 5% is only based on the cable services.
Imagine that.
But if you've got Cox telephone, is it coming through the cable? There's not a regular old-fashioned phone line going?
No, it's delivered over the same physical wire that the television is.
Yeah, so AT&T providing television through their phone line would be the same thing, would it, Mr. Eric? They're paying for the wire that they have to your house. So
Absolutely.
regardless of what you're getting through, I think in most cases.
I will say this, there's a separate charge for each segment of their business. In other words, the telephone, there's a separate charge. The television, there's a separate charge. And the hi-fi, hi-fi? The high-speed internet is just terrific.
But the franchise fees only charged once. So
Yeah, really, I wonder, doesn't seem right.
Can't change it.
Well, there's one other thing it's coming up, it's the
Can only get worse.
hotspots to keep in mind as we progress in the next year to 2 years, because we just signed up for that for our mobile services. We can utilize our phone as a mobile hotspot, so people can technically do away with their DSL services strictly to their phone, just like doing away with their landline. It's the new era.
There are lots and lots of changes continuing to happen in the technology, and one of the things that is not happening is the law is not keeping up. So one of the things that I believe will be looked at, we've discussed that in these meetings previously, is the telephone companies like AT&T don't believe that they should have to play by the same rules as the cable companies, and the cable companies don't believe that both sides are saying that the rules that they have to play by are unfair. AT&T points at Cox or Comcast and says, well, see, they get to do all this stuff and they don't have to do the same things we do. They don't have to deal with the Public Service Commission, et cetera, et cetera. The cable companies point to telephone companies and say, well, see, they get to do the same thing we're doing, but they don't have to play by the same rules. And I believe that within the next few years, we're going to see a lot of lobbying of the legislature in Arkansas to even the playing field. Question is, who's going to feel like it's the most fair playing field, and I guess that's.
But the city's only interested in for use of the right of way, right? I mean, the city has no control over rates.
That's correct, and that's where some of the confusion comes in. Do what?
That makes more sense.
That's where some of the confusion comes in, because some of the franchising laws and those things that still govern how cable companies interact with municipalities and how telephone companies interact with state governments and things like that have not been changed. So when the cable company, back in the day, all they did was provide television. And nobody ever thought that anybody would ever be able to provide television over a phone line. So none of those things were ever thought of. But technically the city, that franchise fee, even though it's based on the television revenue of the cable company, that is their rent for using the right of way, not for anything else. So, and then that leads to the discussion of, well, then they should be paying that franchise fee on everything that they're generating revenue with.
They should, except we can't even get a new franchise contract with the provider just on cable alone.
No. Well, we could, but at this point in time, Kit Williams, the city attorney, has advised that the franchise agreement that the city of Fayetteville is working under right now, which actually dates back to 1989, actually is more advantageous for the city than anything that we would be able to renegotiate with Cox, because of the changes that have happened in federal law since 1989.
One last question on the internet access, and then we can talk offline about some other numbers. I know we asked a few months ago if we were able to get any numbers from the Cox cable on the square that's being used. Were we able to get any usage numbers?
I was not able to get that, but I'll try again.
Proprietary.
I'll keep trying. I'll keep asking them. Hey, we would really like to have some numbers from you guys. Well,
Isn't it
we'll try.
reasonable that since the cities, we don't run advertisements, there's not anything that they sell based on having our city service thing to the school. So it's not like this, what we do, what the city does, public access in the schools, is not competing with another channel or sales of advertising.
Well, once we
So
got the
why?
information, it would be subject to the Freedom of Information Act for people who
Well,
are competing with it.
I understand, but we're just not the same. People don't watch unless they're interested in government meetings and so forth, or they're interested in what their kid did on YouTube or something. I mean, I'll be on public access. They're not watching it for the same kind of entertainment, so there's no ads on there. Of course, we can sell ads. That would defeat the purpose. But I'm just saying there should be a technicality in which they would surrender that information.
Anything else? All right. I guess we'll continue our discussions another day. And if the Internet Subcommittee wants to ever meet on that, feel free, Mr. Chairman. Next up is committee reports. We have a report from the ad hoc committee that was created to review a potential increase in the contract payment for public access provider. Mr. Smith chaired that committee.
Did, and we met last month at the Television Center. 3 members of the committee, Mr. Shepard and Mitchell and myself were there. Mitchell was there on a primitive form of Skype, known as a telephone, with Ann Shelley, and we discussed thoroughly and asked lots of questions and heard a fairly thorough presentation on all of the points except for the providing the studio services. That wasn't discussed at that meeting, but it came from later documents, so I've added that to the resolution at that time, which is up to the full board, of course, whether or not to accept it or amend it. Since I didn't have a portable printer, I went ahead and put it in, and it's easier to mark it out than it is to write it in. But we just lay out the reasons we believe both the expansion services and the funding are appropriate, and recommend this resolution be transmitted to the city council with our advice on changes, 3 changes in the contract, an increase of the annual contract fee by $12,000 to cover the cost of those, which is a real bargain, I think, and that the chair transmit this to city administration and city council. And we approved that in principle at our meeting and recommend it to the full board.
How quickly, if we approve this, could it get before city council?
I will defer to the Director of Communication for that, on that question.
On the contract, that's good. Should I come up there?
Yep.
I think a lot of it's gonna depend, well, the contract, it can be done in different ways. So, a lot of it's gonna be based probably too on your resolution that you're passing tonight. If you do it with that wording, and you're gonna probably, based on your discussions before, recommend going to 105. All right, so I would be the person, I am sure, presenting it. As department head, I present the contract. Usually, I mean, there are options. You have a resolution here. The resolution can go straight to the council. Now, you are an advisory committee. It could be something that we see as something better maybe for the council, that we just take the contract itself and it's in there. Then when I'm presenting it, I say this has, like I usually do, this has gone through the Telecommunication Board. They have a subcommittee. The subcommittee said this. It came back to the full board. The full board decided this. They had a resolution. I have the resolution in your package. They have stated, pull a few of those things in, and do it at the same time with the contract. I personally, and I've talked to Fritz about this, and also Ann, I think it would probably be better to bring it all as the contract together for council following it. But it doesn't necessarily have to go that way. You are an advisory committee, so you can advise them now. I'm just thinking that if we didn't bring the contract for a while, what's the council going to do? Thank you very much. And then we don't have the other package to go with it, which is going to be the changes that justify what you're saying is in the resolution. So it's really up to this board on how you bring that forward. As a staff person, my recommendation, at least the way I'm looking at it now, is it's better just take it all together at the same time as the contract. If this comes to the telecom board, y'all are working on the contract right now, well then the 3 of us review it together. We're going to bring it to the board, as Fritz has said, next month, and I'll bring it as soon as possible. I'm hoping that the contract, just like Fritz has said, goes to them in October. Depends on how much time edit and Honey subcommittee.
So,
is that good?
Yeah, so your feeling is that if we wait and approve this at the same time that we say we like this contract, we want to increase the funding for it, and send it all as a package to the city council, that's the most effective way?
I think in terms of, I'm sorry, I was looking at the question of bringing it to the city council. How you do it, I think you can do it in any way. I think you could pass the resolution tonight or fill it or however you're going to vote on it. And then we bring you the contract and we have the resolution. You can also say, let's hold the resolution until we come back to the contract. It really is up to you.
Okay,
how you
and then
wanna do
transmit them both at the same time.
That's what I recommend.
If I may, and not to be contradictory,
I'll go ahead.
If you consider this resolution tonight, and if you endorse this resolution and you pass this resolution, and that comes to me as the primary person working on a contract, that gives me some significant direction. If you decide not to endorse this resolution and it fails tonight, then that gives us something to really discuss, because then we would possibly be going to the council with a request for increase that's not endorsed by the Telecommunications Board. And we'd have to decide, are we going to try to do that? And so basically what I'm saying is, if you look at the resolution tonight and you consider it tonight, that's going to give us as staff some nice direction in which to go.
And not be
Whichever way.
contradictory. No, I'm just kidding. We have a really good time working
And then
together.
it can be
But-
included with
Yeah.
the contract as supporting documentation for the contract as it goes forward.
And let me, if I can add this really quick, realize that the administration right now is working on a budget that will be proposed to the city council. So you may find as a council, I mean as a board, that it's better if you're going to pass it, to pass it, and then you can send it straight to the city council beforehand. It just, you know, I mean, it's not, nobody's wanting a surprise. I mean, we all have good justification, reasons why we, you know, have talked about it, and I know the subcommittee met on that. So it could even go forward, not only for Ann and Fritz to look at and put the contract together. If y'all put it up to the council early on as an advisory committee, that's another option that you could choose. That might make it to where we'd still have to make the two contracts, probably.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It seems to me, and maybe it's because of the way in which the resolution is drafted, but we're addressing two issues here. One is the changes we'd like to see in the contract, and the other is a budget proposal recommendation. And I'm not clear on whether the contract negotiations and the budget negotiations track each other very well. Seems to me we would be safe in going ahead and adopting this resolution that covers both of them, and then the council can use them however.
And I haven't seen the resolution, so that could help me.
And the, as I understand it, the proposed contract will come back for our review.
Yes.
Oh,
Right.
it starts
Yeah, our
with-
plan is to have that to you before September's meeting, so you can
Next.
Yeah.
decide what direction you want to go with it in that meeting.
Okay. And-
I'd like to move that we pass this tonight, and it'll be in the mix, and, I mean, that, there might be somebody thinking it wouldn't be good with council, no, and then they'd say, did you try to sneak this into this contract or something? So, I think the sooner our public statement of this, advice to the council, the better we are, it'll be in the contract.
So-
It has to be scratched out, that's smaller than rewriting it or something.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so if we pass it tonight, it'll be before the city council for their discussions on budget and then also the contract, whatever the timing is on those two things. Okay.
It's based on when you take it to them, right?
What?
It doesn't say.
There's not a date in
It's
the
not
resolution.
saying, right.
When you have to take it to
So,
them, it just
you
says
can
on the
decide.
ballot.
But you are advisory committee, that would be an advisory action within the way the ordinance is worded.
Mhm.
Fritz is the designated staff member, so he would do what he typically does with that, and again, you advise staff. So if it is your advice that you pass this and then you ask that the staff member send notice to the city council, and you typically we do it by email and also putting it in their boxes, and that he sends it as a representative of he's your staff member.
Right, it should be in the recommended budget to start, the earliest budget that the council sees, so that that number is, they get comfortable with it.
Okay.
So they'll talk about it a long time when they pass budgets.
Okay. Yeah, so if we pass it, I say transmit it with the budget proposal, and I don't know if y'all are gonna stick with the same amount, and you may be forced, are y'all forced to submit the same budget proposal?
No.
It's already been I don't have the name of the form right in front of me, but the outside funder was August 6th was the deadline. So that's already been submitted to the budget process. And that's where I have the disconnect. I'm not sure, and why I would urge you, if you so desire, to go ahead and pass this and get this to the city council now, because they're working on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And having this information to support the document we've already provided them that asks for the increase in funding regarding the budget seems to me to make sense. And I agree that it also needs to be attached to the contract. And Fritz and I will have to do two different versions of the contract One, because if we don't get this extra funding, we're not gonna do all the extra stuff.
Right.
So one contract would reflect that, and one contract would reflect if we continue under the same budget of 93 as we always have. So it does, what I agree with you, and that our knowing now will help us determine where we spend more of our energy. But also the budget item, I think they need to know that now, because they already have a form from us August 6th that says we're asking for more money.
Okay.
But I don't know the workings.
And many times, because a lot, pretty much most, I'll just say that except for Planning Commission, probably and some others, are advisory committees. So I would advise, because you are advising, you are a part of the legislative branch of government. You chair the committee. So what could be helpful to the council when they get the resolution? I'll advise as staff that I think it would be helpful if the chair of the committee does a cover letter to that, because Fritz is in a staffing role, so he is transmitting what you are saying to them, but he has no vote, he has no voice, he is staffing for you. So if you do the letter, where that this went to the board, the board, we've set up a subcommittee and do this, and then get and talk to the council.
Right.
And say this is as an advisory to you, this is our advice. We have so attached in your legalese, whatever. That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Show off your mark.
Yeah. Any other discussion? If not,
Well,
oh,
yeah. So, just to confirm, we're asking a $12,000 increase to, I believe it's $105,000. All right. Now, I am going to play the voice of the taxpayer for a minute, and this is because I've just bought a new car in the great state of South Carolina, which I have now had to pay taxes in the great state of Arkansas. Now, South Carolina has a cap on all new automobile purchases at $300, so you could buy a Porsche or a Ford F-150, you don't pay more than $300. Now, that's thankful because of the automotive lobby, and then we're very appreciative of that. How would you respond to a question that $105,000 has gone to only 100 people last year, 97 class participants, just in a very global umbrella world? If somebody's out there sitting in the hills wondering about all this with their calculator, or, this year 155 people, 105,000 divided by 155. I mean, $1,000, $617 a person. If we were just using that one metric, how would you say it's worth it? Or what would if that one city council member said, y'all, is it worth it? Is this $800 a person worth it? What are they getting this $800? Because we can't show on the website that 30,000 people have logged on and looked, have viewed a month. We can't show they've gone on Granicus and, that 39 people are looking at the city council meeting. How do we justify what we've gotten so far in that? And how do we justify asking for more? And that's just, it's not that I don't support it, it's not that I don't love it, it's not that I don't believe in it, because I've watched it myself. But for those people out there that may be watching and saying, this is a lot of dough for 30 people to go take a class, how do we even respond to that when that council member asks that question?
If I may, that's not all the station does. It's on 24/7, and it's providing many different things that you can request something on there. Every resident of the city can, and get things on there. You go do a short take every week. Right. There are many services beside the people training. I don't even consider the training a necessary part of it to be worth that much. Yeah. If there were no training, you just had to come in there, read the guidebook on cameras or something. Or you couldn't even check out cameras. You can check out cameras. You could take a tripod. You could get all the wires. And you get instructions to do it. So, I mean, God, it's so little for the city to put into it. And it's been operating. How many years, Roots, you remember, as long before you came to work here, this was the amount of, at least 2 years before you came on board, 93,000 was all they're getting. The other argument is that the Cox amount of money, it's $800,000, $900,000 that goes to the franchise fee. Well, we're not supposed to say the money comes from the franchise fee, but it's Cox that's providing this station. Both these stations plus educational, and 2 for the university, has an extra one in the high school now. The university, by the way, does still have its university station on the low tier where it used to have. It started out as government channel was channel 6, and 8 was CAT, and then in violation of what everybody expected, it went up to 16 and 18, and then it was said there'll never be anything but the lowest free tier, cheapest tier, which is even now maybe $20. So that was Cox's decision to move these stations up, and they're still paying the franchise fee, but in spite of advertising that you could get a box, Cox tried to advertise you could get a free box for 2 years. That was 2 years ago this October. And you could watch the higher tier where these are. I mean, people every day who don't know they could have gotten a box and they will ask me, what happened to the public TV? Because it moved. And they don't have the box. Some people have the box and don't know that you can go to 218 and find out. But this is very inexpensive, and the city's getting the whole franchise fee. And the point has been made over the years that the city's getting enough from cable to provide a little more to operate the public access station. And so I see no way that it's not, that they don't deserve a raise. They deserved a raise 5 years ago.
And it's not that I don't support the race. It's just I know that there are people out there that say, well, why do we need it? And I know that there may be city council members that may get a call that say, well, the $12,000 could go fix 4 potholes on, Maple Street, So I want to make sure that we're able to say, I don't know if we could ever provide a number, aside from the watching live, if we could provide a number and say, this touched 1,372 people, from checking out that equipment to watching it on YouTube to doing that. I don't know if we could provide that data.
Well, used to you could.
Well,
I would walk around my neighborhood and people would tell me what I talked about.
Yeah, but if there would just at some point
it was really the people's thing at that time.
Yeah.
Everybody got it who had Cox at all, and you couldn't find it because you just had that many 20 stations, 20 something to scan up to the Weather Channel or ESPN or whatever was top dog a few years ago. So I don't see any danger in that. I mean, there will be people always who don't think it's important. There are people who don't want meetings filled. There are cities around here who don't have their council filled, for God's sake, and they don't know what goes on unless they go to the meeting.
Right.
And it's we're spending. It's not taxpayer money. It's the people that pay for that fee. We can look at them and say, well, I pay this fee in addition to paying taxes, so I ought to get this free public television. So I think it's a small number of people who would make a convincing argument that it's not worthwhile.
Well, I don't disagree. I don't, and I do not want to seem contradictory whatsoever. But it is even with Arkansas, with the university, looking at bus routes, where we stop. There's places that we stop, that we add service, and places that we stop service just because fewer people are riding. Oprah Winfrey's show network, there's shows she's canceled, and there's things she's modified and changed the number of live hours just because not enough people are watching. I just think I'll be very blunt and say that as people talk more and more about, even here in Arkansas, where I think is an amazing place to live, and I think that we have had a very liberal approach to lots of things as far as providing the most wonderful services possible, I don't think it would ever hurt us to be able to provide some number from that person that checks out the camera, from the person that comes to class, from the number of unique touches, to be able to say, before City Council this year we had 1,812 touches, and we may be able to do that. And if we do, that's great. But if we don't, I think that that's just one more number to justify. You know, I have to justify the number of visits that I do on taxpayer dollar to visit donors. I have to show what I bring back from that. You know, that is, any taxpayer could FOIA that. And it is here and there. I would love for us, we've got some great numbers here, but as you just said, we do more than that. I'd like for us at some point to be able to quantitatively show that number. Because then we may say, well, hell, we need $15,000 instead of $12,000. But, you know, that's, I would ask at some point in the future, as we're approaching city council, because they're going to have a lot of requests for a lot of things. That
Well, you know, sampling is in for a lot of these things. You get the phone calls, they're sampling potential voters on things. And I would join you in going house to house through a few sections of town and finding out how many people are watching either of these stations and get a sample of different parts of town, whether it's the people who have all the stations in the world and all the sports and all the movies, down to the people who have that lowest tier and what they have to say about it.
Absolutely. Or, you know,
it's fun to do that, actually. And you get to be,
or to look at something like water bills, where if you pay your water bill online, then we add a checkbox sometime that says, yes, this month I watched something on the government channel. Or, you know, as you're registering for something with city services, on one of the checkboxes, yeah, I saw 3 shows of city council that I watched. I mean, that doesn't cost us any money. And, you know, that's providing some sample of city residents.
It's a great idea, but I suspected, I'm sorry.
It's a fascinating discussion, but I don't think it has to do with the motion on the floor.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor.
We do have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion, any other discussion as to the motion with respect to the resolution?
How much has the Cox franchise fees changed in the last, since '93?
Since '93, I can't tell you. Right now, it's running about $740,000 a year in revenue. I do want to reiterate with this board that the city attorney has been very adamant and in his opinion that because those fees are paid for the use of the right-of-way, the rights-of-way for them to string their cables, that to connect the revenue from the franchise fee to the costs of operation of the television center or the PEG channels doesn't work because they're not directly connected, and the city attorney has been very straightforward in his opinion of that, and the city council also agrees that those are not connected in any way.
Well, I don't know that decision is set in stone, and it's never been taken to court. But I'm aware of that, and there's been a fear expressed by the city attorney that we would lose something if we went to bat for it.
It's an interesting history lesson, but it's not related to the motion.
Okay. Sorry, Steve.
All right. Well, we do have a motion and a second to approve the resolution that came out of the subcommittee. All those in favor of forwarding that to City Council, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Mr. Smith.
Motion. Move that the chair appoint a committee to develop metrics on usage of the public access television and nominate Mr. Spearman as the chair of that committee.
I think that would be a fantastic idea, and I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. Good luck with your new venture.
The metrics committee.
And who would like to join him on that subcommittee?
We get to go
Shepard?
I told him I would.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Would you
And
join me?
Greg? All right. Mr. Goggins, Mr. Shepard will join Mr. Spearman. All right. Well, there's no other business. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And meeting's over.
Bye.